And it's nice to be back doing a live here on TikTok. So what I'm going to do is just give it a second or two and let people get in here. Let me move this microphone. So there's a couple of people in here already. Okay, good. So I'm going to be here for a little while, and I thought in the time that I'm here, I'm going to be talking about toxic parents, dysfunctional families, the usual stuff. But I'm going to focus a little bit on Christmas as well, and how the imminent arrival of Christmas and all of the quote unquote magic that comes with Christmas and what that means for people, particularly one, if they've grown up in any kind of dysfunction, and then two, if they're kind of living with toxic parents that perhaps are still there, perhaps aren't even still there, and what impact that can have. But I thought I'd start with talking about, I've been posting some content recently. So the last couple of things that I posted, I guess it was a little bit of a rant. Actually, the piece of content itself was born out of, I get frustrated, right? Because I post like content for people with like toxic parents, yeah. And quite often I get people that will show up in the comments. Like there's the real like, people that come in and get like really angry about the piece of content, and then there's the people that are a little bit more sort of passive with it, and actually start like, you know, saying, you know, all the things that the people say to people that are living with toxic parents, that, you know, have toxic parents in their life. You get people in the comments that come in and say all of the stuff that I post about, yeah. My opinions on Andrew Tate, I'll answer that in a minute. And they come in and they say all the stuff, you know, like I've talked about tirelessly in a lot of my content that I do, like, you know, acting as if they're sort of more spiritual, and that you should be able to kind of, just because it's your parents, you should be able to deal with the abuse. And I posted like 5 of the things that I hear the most, you know, have you tried thinking about why they're like it, or, you know, you'll miss them when they're gone, or you only get one mum or dad, and all of that kind of stuff. And these people show up in the comments doing it. So I made a video where I'd read a couple of them, and some of the people are really passive, right? And I think when you know what passive people are like, yeah, when they're like pushing you for a reaction, and then you give the reaction and they do that kind of reactive abuse. I get a lot of those people in the comments, and most of the time you ignore them, but every now and then like you answer them. And so I thought I'm just going to make a video. So I made this video. And in this particular video, I talk loudly anyway, right? My wife is always saying I'm only here to me. But I was shouting in the video, right? Because I was a little bit annoyed. I was angry, right? And when we're angry, we sometimes raise our voice. And so one person in the comments was literally like saying, she said that she diagnosed me with PTSD. It was a 60-second video. Then she asked me if I have children, which people always ask me, right? As if like when you have children, you'll realize that you can abuse them. That actually, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to talk about that for a second, because that really, really annoys me. The question of do you have children, right, is almost inciting that once you have children, you'll realize it's okay to abuse them too, right? Which is just ridiculous, right? And I've always got quite a good answer, by the way, when people ask me if I have children, because I have 6, and my eldest is 16, and sort of left school and college. So this next question people ask me is, well, you wait till they grow up and start going through the complexities of life. And listen, I'll say it again, I'll say it all the time. I am no beacon of a parent, right? I make mistakes, I mess up bad, I get it wrong, and, you know, all of that stuff. And I recognize that this is completely different to what we're talking about with toxic parents. And actually, when you have your own kids, when you have your own children, if you've got a toxic parent and you haven't, when you have your own children, you don't start to think, oh, you know, the abuse that you experienced kind of makes sense and I get it now when you have children. No, actually it makes it worse. And you start to realize, wow, how could anybody ever do this to their kids? And how could anybody ever be like that? And so I just think it's interesting, because I think a lot of people that have grown up in dysfunction, that might have grown up with parents that kind of gaslight them a lot and that are just wholly toxic in the way that I'm talking about. A lot of these people, I think, may struggle with anger because you were never allowed your anger. Yeah. And whenever you used your anger, what you experienced as a result of your anger was reactive abuse, right? People would take that anger and say, there you go. That's, you know, that's why I'm like I am, because you're like this. Or see, there you go, you're angry. And I get a lot of that in the comments, right? If I'm kind of assertive, or I use what I would call healthy anger, I show that I'm angry by what they've said, and use that anger by then, you know, feeling like, actually, I don't necessarily need to find any compassion for you in the moment, because what you're trying to do is make me angry. So I'm going to use that in a way. I actually think there's a lot of healing that can come from actually allowing yourself anger in that way, using it in a healthy way, and just showing that you're not happy with something and that you're not going to stand for it. So sometimes, but what they will still, these people, toxic people, will still take that anger, try and tie you up with it and use it against you. And it can be quite hard, right? It's quite hard to go against. Let me read some of this stuff here. Having to live with toxic shame is real. Love your content on toxic parents. Yeah. And look, a lot of languages have 2 or more words for shame. We only have 1 in the English language. And that's why I think using the word toxic or the term toxic shame helps, because what we're talking about is this deep-rooted idea that there's something wrong with us. I think a lot of people talk about shame when they're talking about embarrassment, which is like linked to shame, but it's slightly different. Shame is like this, I love John Bradshaw says, it's like this huntsman that's following you. And I do this with like my hands because it's like following behind you and it's prodding you in the back saying, they're going to find out, they're going to find out. And it makes you be defensive and it makes you either hide yourself, or for me, it made me pump my chest out and keep everybody at arm's length. And my resting face became an angry one, because I was trying to protect myself, because I had this core belief that deep down inside of me, if people saw who I really was, then they would hate me too. And I think sometimes people talk about stigma, and they say, I didn't speak because I was scared of stigma. And what they actually mean is, I judge myself so harshly, I assume everybody else will do that too. And so sometimes actually we think there's more stigma than there is, and stigma is very real. I'm not saying it isn't, but sometimes it's about our own self-judgment. I'm no contact with my mum 3 years now, and Christmas is a hard time of the year for me and my sisters. Yeah, I'm going to get into that in a moment, and we're going to talk quite deeply about that. I still have guilt and struggle to relax due to a toxic parent. I think that's really common. Like, if you lived in an environment where you were made to walk on eggshells all of the time when you were a child, right, then your body would have found an incredible way to keep you safe, right, which would have been to keep you on your toes and make sure that you were there and able to survive that situation where you needed to be on your toes and you were on eggshells and you didn't know if you were going to be the one that was going to get hit by the either physical or emotional abuse yet next. So when you were a child, being in that kind of hyper vigilant, hyper alert state all of the time was an incredible survival mechanism. And I always tell people, you know, you should almost be, have love for yourself for finding that. But it can be so frustrating in your adulthood when it's so hard to be present, and it's so hard to come down into that place of rest, and it's so hard to be in your own presence, because that's when your body starts telling you, you know, we need to be hyper alert here, something's going to go on, and you get hyper tuned in and hyper sensitive to everything that's going on around you, and it can be debilitating. When you have your own kids, it does make it worse, and you just want to protect them from the grandparents. Yeah, and what I'm learning from what I hear from a lot of people as well is that parents like this become incredible sometimes to the grandparent, and I think that's even like another layer of the abuse. Look how amazing I'm being with your children, and you never got this. Bit like the parents do with the siblings, and they play them off against each other and they pick a good one. I think they can do that sometimes with the grandchildren too, and sometimes they're just horrible to them. And I think, look, if you're anybody that's had to cut a parent off and you're worried about taking a grandparent off of your child, you're also teaching your children clear boundaries and what is okay to accept in your life, and that, you know, nobody gets to treat you in certain ways. So I think it's incredibly powerful to do that. Let's see what else we've got here. I'm not no contact yet, and I have BPD, ADHD, and I've still not let go, accepted this situation, but I'm trying. This is the thing, and I think this is important, right? Because I think sometimes people try and, this idea that you should be able to let go of it and just live with it with complete freedom. I think some people manage to do that. Maybe they do. But I think if they're still in your life and you haven't been able to reach that step yet, then doing what you can to get through is enough. And we shouldn't put ourselves under pressure to reach this place where we're like spiritually enlightened and have let it all go, because I don't know if that exists. Go to my question. I don't have a lot of time. Okay, this is completely off topic. Somebody's asking me about Andrew Tate. Listen, I've never really consumed much of his content. I think it's probably all a big act to get eyes on him, and I think he's problematic. That's about all I would say about it. I don't really have an opinion on him. Other than that, I think it's a big act. And that's it. I see you live. Woohoo! Love your videos. Good. Thank you. I can hear car doors outside or footsteps on the stairs and make myself busy doing nothing. Yeah, I think this is that hypervigilance, right? And you're like, you can be talking to somebody and I'll be mid-sentence and I'll see a very subtle change, and it's almost like picking up on their energy, and it probably is. My intuition goes into that hypervigilance and I sense and recognize that I've done something that's changed their mood. And then the problem is that I take responsibility for that, and then I can't get rid of it. And then I'm so hyper tuned in, and it makes me hate social situations, because if I'm in a group of 5 or 6 people and everybody's interacting with small talk, I'm so over tuned in to what's going on in their full experience that I can't get away from it, and it's all consuming and it's overwhelming and it's horrible, and it ends up like I live my life having to be busy all of the time. Let me give you another good example of that. When we go away on holiday, I've got children, right? I used to take a lot of photos, still do sometimes. And we think that why do we take loads of photos? We're addicted to our devices. But so much of it is because I can't just be present and enjoy the moment. So let me find a reason to not have to be here, right? Because I'm overstimulated and I'm over-tuned in, and it can be horrendous, yeah. How can I make my husband see how toxic his parents are? This is a good question. How can I make my husband see how toxic his parents are? In his eyes, parents are angels. Yeah, it's really hard. Look, I think if you push too hard, if you think that you've seen it, if you push too hard, you're actually going to make it worse. So what you have to do is just keep providing that safe space. No I told you so's, just highlight. And you don't have to be nasty with it, but you can highlight, I don't think that was very nice what we just experienced, and here's what I experienced as a result. I think that's a good way. Are you born as a highly sensitive person, or do you become? So look, I believe everything is like a big cocktail of the two. I absolutely believe that I was born with a deeper level of sensitivity than, say, one of my brothers or both of my brothers or some of the people around me. The problem is that sensitivity is an incredible trait. It's very misunderstood in Western culture. We need to understand it much deeper because it is like a superpower. The problem is that my sensitivity was not nurtured. And in fact, what happened is I had difficult experiences when I was a child. And so it made my sensitivity something that was really scary. I began to take responsibility for everything that I felt. I felt very enmeshed with the environment. I didn't know how to have boundaries. Where's my body? Where's my feelings? How's it separate from everybody else's? And as I've always said, the problem is not that I sense things very deeply. It's that when I sense them, I take responsibility for it. So look, I do believe that I was born. There's research that shows there's like over 150 species that have levels of sensitivity. And I think it's the most under talked about thing in the whole conversation, that kind of continuum of sensitivity that we sit on. So yes, I think it's innate. Yes, I think that we're born with it. But I think the problems are to do with our childhood. And then I think our experiences can make it heightened as well. I think we are seeing more and more sensitivity in young people, which again, it can be an incredible thing. But I think that's a lot to do with devices being put in front of children. And we've got to remember that our brain is developing very fast when we're first born, and it's developed based on our experiences and the ways that we interact with our environment. So I do think that the world that we're living in now is creating a higher level of sensitivity. I realized recently that mine and my partner's child will never have a grandma or nan. Yeah, that's hard to deal with. It's not nice. It's not something that you chose, and it's not your fault. My mother flipped at my 17-year-old, so that was the end of my son's relationship with them. Good. I'm glad you put them first. I'm trying to keep up with these comments a bit. Sorry. Morning, Vaughn. My mum's the worst one and dad's enabler. How do you stop being so reactive? My mum's voice is powerful. Look, I don't want to necessarily just like advocate for cutting them out, but like the boundaries in the end has to be, look, you'll never be able to reason with them and they're going to consistently try and abuse you. So in the end, you have to say, look, do I want to be in this relationship and allow myself, you know, and just have to deal with it? Because I think that's the only way. Because it's not easy, because they've known you since your birth, and so they know how to kind of tap into what they need to tap into to create that reactive abuse. So it's really hard. It's really hard. I asked my parents for 4 years to be involved, and it's now 6 months and they haven't seen my kids. That's incredible. I'm sorry. My mum can't get her way, so she subtly turns family members against me. Look, this is really, really common. I've talked extensively about the smear campaign, but what these toxic parents will do, they will go to any lengths. And I think turning everybody against you, especially when you wake up, this is the hard thing, yeah? And this is why I say, like, this whole forgiveness thing can be really difficult, because you might cut them out and create completely amazing, clear boundaries so they're never in your life. And then they will go around and befriend people close to you. They'll get your siblings and they'll get other family members. They'll play the victim normally and turn them all against you. And then that will perpetuate your experience. And so this kind of enlightened place of forgiveness, I understand it, letting go and all of that kind of stuff and moving on and not letting them have an influence on your life anymore. But we're not talking about somebody that just disappears. I don't care how good your boundary are. They'll find a way around it, and they'll do that with the smear campaign, and they'll do that with people closest to you. Anybody that's had any experience of a toxic person in this way will know that one of the first things that they do when you create that first boundary, clear boundary, and cut them out, is they will set about making everybody around you, they'll try and get close to whoever they can. My mindset mentor believes I shouldn't take justice for my extreme abuse. I believe he's wrong. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but we got to be like a lot of like mindset. Here's the thing about mindset. Yes, mindset's important, right? In the end, we have to take responsibility. It's shit show that we do, that we should have to do, but in the end we do. And you won't mindset shift yourself out of trauma. You will not mindset shift yourself out of trauma. All right? So like this whole mindset shift stuff, you got to be careful of that. And I said mindset shit and it was a slip of the tongue, but I meant mindset shift, but it was probably not a mistake. They do everything to trigger me and it hurts a lot, yeah. I'm going to keep reading these. I want to come to the Christmas bit in a minute. How do you cope with your parents' rejection, abandonment, and they don't let you be an individual? Look, I think it's horrible, and I don't want to try and give you like clear answers, because I think that's unfair. I think it's something that we have to find ways to live with. I've talked in the past, and I'll say it again now, about mothering and fathering figures and building your own community. Again, you know, it's horrible, and you shouldn't have to do that. But unfortunately, I mean, I don't know what else to say. What's your opinion on taking justice for abuse on family members? It depends what justice means. Depends what justice means. You might have elaborated on that further down. Yeah, your entire family turned against you. I'm sorry. I'm 52. My mother was a narcissist. Thank God I changed how I brought up my kids. Thank God you did too. I refer to her as my karmic parent because she's a covert narc. No contact since March 2022. Covert narcs are the worst, by the way. They are the worst. And the way that they will pull you into their world, yeah? The way that they will pull you in. You'll set a clear boundary. If you block the text, they'll send a letter. Then they'll get to somebody else around you. And they'll pull you in. And you start questioning your reality and thinking, am I going crazy? What do I need to do here? Then you start trying to rationalize with the ways that they've connected with you and trying to meet them halfway. And none of it will happen. When you're dealing with a covert narcissist who is that bad, yeah? I don't care what anybody says. You'll never change them. You'll never rationalize with them, and you'll never even be able to meet them halfway. I'll argue that with anybody. The only thing you can do is cut them out. And how horrible how horrible it is if that's one of your parents. My mum and dad purposely abused and turned people against me, so he took proof in photos and videos. Yeah. Another thing that these toxic parents will do is, and this will make you question your reality quite a lot, is they will accuse you of being and doing all of the things that they are and that they're doing. So you'll be thinking, oh my God, like they're saying the exact things that I've been thinking that they are. And so what they're doing is they're projecting their shit onto you, and they will do that. And that will make you question your reality, because they'll get it so to a T of what you're thinking that they were, that you'll start to think, you know, and all of this stuff again is to bamboozle you and to make you question your reality. And I was talking earlier about how I know these people when they show up in my comments, because you'll reply to them just quite clearly. And most of the time I shouldn't reply to them, right? But sometimes I do. You'll reply to them quite clearly, just answering their questions, and then bam, you get this big long message, and most of it's incoherent and doesn't make any sense. And you think, yeah, I've seen this before. My mum used to be toxic, but relationship is better because I help financially. Look, that doesn't sound good to me. Listen, your experience, and I think you should do what works for you. But if they're only being nice because you're helping them financially, I mean, it's hard, isn't it? Toxic parents will always paint themselves as the we care parents for everybody else. Yeah, they'll do that. And what they'll do is they'll use half-truths, and they'll sort of allude to a bit of the truth and then say, and you know, that's why I did it, but you know, I'm just trying to do my best and sometimes I mess up, you know, and they'll plead in that way. And if that doesn't work, and you know, like, if that doesn't work, then you call the toxic person out. And if you ever had this interaction with them where you're in front of them and then you call them out, yeah, and then when they can't escape, they'll go to, I can't do this. You can't do this to me, yeah? Male or female, whoever they are, they'll go straight to that when there's no other way of getting out of it. 23 years from cutting out my mum, and I still long for the relationship that never was. Horrible. I'm so sorry you have to go through that. Explain covert narcissist, please. Somebody said here. Like, I've lost track of these comments, I'm afraid. Watching your lives bring me comfort and realization. Thank you. You wouldn't survive without them. Try and build a community, and check all the comments in a lot of my videos, right? You'll relate to a lot of people there. And I'm thinking about in the future trying to create some sort of space away from social media, like on a Zoom or something like that. It's just building it into my diary, but I'll think about that in the future. For somebody to just describe what a covert narcissist. So if you take what a narcissist is, and I'm going to give you a really crap definition of what a narcissist is, but very simply, they place themselves at the center of the universe, and everyone is, you know, but should bow down to them as an extension of them. They don't reflect or anything like that. They are the center of the world, and everybody else should bow down around them and fall in line and do what they want and need. And just a narcissist will do that by saying, I am the best, and everybody, you know, everybody else needs to fall in line. Covert narcissist, which I think is more common, or I don't know, this is the ones that I hear about a lot. A covert narcissist will make themselves the center of the universe by making themselves a victim. So they will always pick, you know, people in their lives, partners and stuff that are not good for them. And it's all part of the, I was going to say plan, but I don't think it's that necessarily conscious, but they have to make sure that they're the victim all of the time. And then they can use that, and they use that to keep themselves the center of the universe. And it's never their fault. You know, anything bad that ever happens, it's not because there's no reflection, or this is, yeah, okay, maybe I made this mistake and maybe I could have been better here. There's none of that. It's all everybody else's fault. And if you just didn't do this, you know, if you just weren't so naughty as a child, if you just, you know, if you hadn't have been like that, then my ex-partner would still be here. It's your fault, and all of that stuff, yeah? So yeah, that's what a covert narcissist is. And I think that's what a lot, when I talk about toxic parents, that's what I'm talking about. Someone's asked, shouldn't I be at school? Are you asking me that? Oh, come on, surely my beard's better. Surely my beard is nice and grown out for that question. Welcome to the trolls. I've known 2 covert narcs, chronic victims. They con people as they are seen as broken children. Yeah, and so with the covert narcissists, what happens is a lot of them can, like, you know, a lot of the work that I do is trying to create a more compassionate society and understanding people's experiences and making sure that we're being there for them. And a lot of covert narcissists will tap into that, right? And they'll use that to their advantage by preying on people with empathy, with high empathy. And so, like, if you're somebody like me who has like a depth of empathy and a real lack of boundaries, ongoing lack of boundaries in where I give my time and my emotional space to, then, you know, without victim blaming here, I'm pulling in the narcissists. You know, they see you a mile off. But what I would say is that when you wake up, yeah, then you'll see that they stay away from you. They stay away from you because they know, yeah, deep down they know that you're awake and they stay away from you. But when you're not awake, then they're there. They never take accountability. Yeah. And I just wanted to quickly touch on as well some of the things that you hear, like the things that people say when somebody's got like a toxic parent. And when we say toxic, the reason I use the word toxic, and I don't like to get too caught up in labels, but it's because, like, if you say narcissist, then someone will be like, you know, you're not a doctor. That's a medical thing, and you shouldn't be. So I just say toxic, and I just think if you've got a toxic parent, you fucking know what I'm talking about, right? You know what I'm talking about. And so if you think about what people are told when they've got a toxic parent, you wouldn't hear it with any other relationship in your life. If anybody said it for any other relationship, people would be like, what the, how can you say that to this person? Like, for example, if I said, my boss at work just gaslights me. Every time I'm there, they gaslight me and they're just horrible to me all the time. Can you imagine somebody saying, well, you know, have you ever thought about trying to see it from their point of view? Like, you wouldn't say that. If you said, I'm in this relationship with somebody, yeah, and they're constantly abusive to me all of the time. They make me question my reality. They send me abusive text messages randomly on any given day. Can you imagine saying to that person, well, you'll only get one of them, you know, you'll miss them when they're gone? Wouldn't happen, would it? I've got this friend who is just like, always makes me feel like all my siblings are way, way better than me, right? And they're just like really emotionally horrible to me, and they make out like I've made their life hell, right? Can you imagine giving the answer of, maybe you should think about forgiveness and letting them go? Have you ever thought about what might have happened to them to make them like that? Like it wouldn't happen, would it? Nobody would ever say that. Yet, if it's your mum or dad, then you hear it all of the time. And growing up, I wasn't able to be the main character in my own life. Wow, that's a big saying. Never heard that before. I wasn't able to be the main character in my own life. Yeah, amazing. Who's this Snow Striker? Can I like block that or something? I've gone no contact with my parents due to narcissism, but they've ignored their own grandchild. Yeah, they will, because they don't care about anything else, do they? Thoughts on Dr. Gabor Mate. He's my biggest teacher. I did a workshop, full day workshop with Dr. Gabor Mate about 5 or 6 years ago. And that wasn't 6 years ago, it was probably more like 5 years ago. I've tried to block this Snow Striker from taking up the comments, and I think I've just sent him a friend request. So yeah, I wanted to talk about Christmas, because Christmas is coming up as well, and like people have this. I'm just deleting that request to get them in here. There's this thing that happens at Christmas, right, where all you see everywhere is like these perfect families, and you'll even hear people, you know, that like don't particularly get on with their parents, but they're going to see them for Christmas and how it turned out like it was okay. And you know, when on that, so I volunteer for a charity called NACOA. I'm an ambassador for them, called the National Association for Children of Alcoholics here in the UK. And what happens nearly every Christmas, we call it the Christmas phenomenon, is that in the Christmas holidays, calls to the helpline for children affected by parents drinking drop, because they have this Christmas hope that maybe this Christmas will be different, and maybe this will be the one where it's all amazing. And they drop for like a week or two, and then bam, they go right up as the kind of hope is shattered when it's just exactly how they always expected it to be. And so like there's this push at Christmas, isn't there, like to believe that the Christmas magic means that Well, here's some like misplaced ideas about Christmas magic. One, Christmas magic means that all your difficult emotions just simply disappear. I wish that was the case. Wouldn't it be nice? Two, another one is that you can forget all of the past abuse and difficult crap that your family members have done to you, and you should put it behind you for Christmas. You should put it behind you. Again, can you imagine that being said about any other form of abuse? What else happens at Christmas? The belief that, that you should be able to accept people's abusive and emotionally dysfunctional behavior just because it's Christmas. And there's this pressure, isn't there, to be with family. And I guess if you've got a toxic parent, then at Christmas they'll make you feel really guilty that they might be alone as a result of their own fucking actions, right? Alcohol tends to play a big part, right? And everybody starts drinking, and then that can cause a lot of problems. I haven't drank for over 10.5 years. And it's kind of, everybody in my life now knows that I don't drink, so it doesn't get pushed on me, but maybe for the first couple of years it did. And I think a lot of people who are newly sober make alcohol the evil, and so it can be really hard to see alcohol around, which can be really difficult as well for a lot of people. And then even if you've laid like the best boundaries, Christmas has this way of kind of really wanting to push those boundaries away, do you know what I mean? And make you feel bad for having them. And then this helps people get beyond those boundaries. And so it can be really difficult to maintain and uphold those boundaries. And there's that push for that magic, right? That is sort of just unfounded, really. And it can be a really, really difficult time of year. And then even if you've had toxic parents in the past and they've been cut out, then Christmas can be like a really triggering time of year, because you can see all of the happy families together, and it can make you think about the family that you perhaps never had. And, there's all this kind of snuggling up in front of the fire kind of pictures and visions that people give you of Christmas. And if you've never had that, it's going to be triggering. And then, if you've got your own kids and you're seeing them open the presents, and then that's going to be horrible, because, well, not horrible, but like it might bring up some stuff for you where you think, I wonder if my mum or dad ever even looked at me like this when they were opening them. So it's a really difficult time of year for a lot of people. And I think it is being more talked about online. I think people are talking about how difficult it can be for some people. But I think, a lot of people are left feeling like they're the bad ones, right? Like just because Christmas is coming, you should somehow instantly just forgive abuse, or your kind of emotional struggles should disappear because of the magic of Christmas. Abby's asked, can I ask you how you deal with the guilt for kicking your family out of your life? Look, I guess it's for clarity. I've never had to cut a family member out. My experience, my dad was an alcoholic, and I lost him when I was 9 as a result of his drinking. And then I've always been quite close to my mum. Everything that I say is from my experience of loving people who've lived this experience. But what I would say is that, look, here's a few things. One, ask yourself if it's guilt or if it's shame. Guilt is suggesting that you've done something wrong. And I think if you're quite clear that you haven't done something wrong, then there's nothing to feel guilty about. So what you might be feeling is shame. You might be feeling like you're a bad person because you've done what you've done, and that's slightly different. And you're not a bad person. You're not a bad person at all. In fact, your guilt is unfounded. So it could be shame. And then also, and I've talked about this in the past as well, there'll be a lot of like living grief as well. What you're feeling is living grief. It's grieving the parent you never had. It's grieving the fact that you've had to let this person go out of your life and they could never be what you wanted them to be. This person says, Wheelie says, I do Christmas alone, would rather do that than be with toxic people. Yeah, see, I think that's going to be an experience for a lot of people. It's easier without them as a trigger. Start new activities every year. Yeah. Go to farms for Christmas events and do one holiday new tradition. Oh, I love that. That's it. Living grief, says Deb. Yeah, that's it. That is it. We got any other questions here? Yeah, somebody's saying it's important to hold strong in your boundaries in Christmas. It is important, and it ain't easy, you know. I want to make sure that holds space for the fact that it is really hard as well for a lot of people to do that, because you know, people know they'll push even more of your buttons, right, and they'll get you even more. I've got time for one or two more questions. If anybody wants to give me chuck a couple of questions out before I close this down. For anybody that doesn't know, by the way, I filmed this. There's a camera just there, and I filmed this, and it goes on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribed to that, and you can watch this back. And I make loads of reels out of it as well. Or TikToks, as we're on here. How do I deal with the guilt of my parents not being there for my daughter? Look, I think you should celebrate the fact that you've been strong enough to cut what would be a toxic influence out of your daughter's life, and fucking power to you for doing that. And I think, you know, a lot of people do it to save their children, from the abuse that their children might feel, but also to show your children, don't let anybody treat you like this. Like, it is BS to say to people that blood is thicker than water. It's BS to say to people that you should love your family no matter what, right? Why would you ever say that, right? Why would you say that to somebody? You might say it if you were trying to be vindictive and getting them to kind of, to see past the way you're abusing them. So power to you, and teach your daughter that you keep people in your life who make you feel good, that enhance your life and want to love you. And if anybody's emotionally abusive, yes, we all make mistakes, but this is completely different. If anybody's emotionally abusive, you put yourself first. You put yourself first, and you don't have them in your life. That's what I would say. Just sub to your YouTube, can't wait. Yeah, there's loads of other past videos already on there as well. I would love to see you live, Josh. Will you be speaking anywhere next year? Yes, so I will be sort of traveling around doing a lot of speaking. I do breathwork for emotional release as well. So if you don't know what that is, it's this breathwork practice where I get you to kind of scream at the end and you release all of these big emotions. Have a look on my profile, you'll see it. I do that regularly at a men's event, but I do it for all genders as well. And I'm going to be doing lots of those next year across the UK in person for all genders, yeah. I still want to talk to them to understand me, how to stop this. I don't know if that'll ever stop, you know, wishing that they'd be able to hear you. But if you're talking about a covert narcissist, like I think you mentioned earlier, they'll never hear you. I believe that to be the truth, and it's horrible. It's not really for me to say that, but my experience is that you'll never change a covert narcissist. I'm 56 and decided to cut my mum out of my life. I feel relief. Good for you. Power to you. We cannot change yesterday, but we can create tomorrow. Love that. Okay, let me talk about forgiveness, because let me spend a couple of minutes talking about forgiveness when it comes to toxic parents. Look, if you take the definition of forgiveness as being laying boundaries, letting them go, and not letting them have any impact on your life anymore, that clear definition, if you take that definition, then I think you should forgive, right? But I think forgiveness, I think people struggle to fucking say that word about somebody who's been abusive to them. So they go, no, I'm going to cut them out and move on with my life. And some people would say, well, that is forgiveness. And if it is, then great, then that's what it is. But then, you know, the next layer of that is if they're still abusing you, and you've got the smear campaign and they're turning everybody against you, what are you supposed to do? Just keep forgiving them every time? Like, I would say you've got to put down clear boundaries and don't let them let them have as little impact on your life as you can. Some people would say to me, that's forgiveness. If it is, great. But I wouldn't begrudge people saying, I don't want to call it forgiveness. I've cut them out, moved on. I live a much better life without them, some people say. And then someone goes, well, that is forgiveness. And again, maybe it is. But I think people should do what works for them. And too many people say you should forgive. And I think you shouldn't. There's no shoulds here. I think some people could. I think you should do what works for you to have the most freeing life you can possibly have, because you didn't ask for this. That's what I'd say on forgiveness. So it's quite nuanced. But that's my opinion on it. Water runs deeper than blood. Family doesn't... Oh, what have I done here? Oops. Family doesn't always mean loyalty. No, family is something that's earned and built. Doesn't just happen. They've booked a meal on Christmas and don't even want to go. See, this is true for a lot of people. It's horrible. And you feel like you've got to go and put up with it. Ever come to Australia for workshops? Maybe one day. I'd love to. Let's make it happen. I've got quite a big following in Australia on here and Instagram. So maybe I do online stuff. So I've got a 6-week online program that starts in January. The idea is to embark on your healing journey and become, meet with, connect with, and become your inner child's champion. People have talked about how life-changing it is. This will be the 5th cohort that I've ran. I think over 500 people have done it in the past. So have a look. The link in my bio is there. If you've got any questions, drop me a note, either email or Instagram, and I can answer them. I don't know if you can message me on here. I don't really know how that works. My mum has physically and emotionally abused me as a child and can't remember a thing. They can't remember a thing? That's what they always say as well. I don't understand forgiveness. I'm not religious. Is that where it comes from? No sense to me. Look, again, and the person that asked, Angela, who asked the question, and it's a good question, Angela, as well. I agree if the behaviour continues, but what if it doesn't continue and they truly change? Well, this is different. If they've truly changed their behaviour, then that's completely different. In most instances, a lot of the instances that I'm talking about when it's covert narcissist, then there isn't a change of behaviour. But absolutely, listen, I do believe that. If somebody's changed their behaviour, if you can find a place of forgiveness, great. I mean, if they've truly changed their behaviour, then I would advocate for that, yeah. My mum is playing mind games and playing my youngest brother against me. He loves it, yeah. So common. We've talked a lot about that in this video. If you've missed the beginning, catch it on YouTube. It'll be on there by later or tomorrow. I want to see my family, but not my dad. See, that's what a lot of people have to put up with. I definitely won't be forgiving my toxic family. My mum's partner was a narcissist. Yeah, and I don't blame you for that. I want my son to be around love, not wonder why their granddad has no relationship with them. Yeah. And tell them, by the way, when they're old enough, tell them. Tell them exactly why. I was forced to sit with SA family member and told I should forgive that. I'm happier alone on holidays now. Yeah, good for you. 5 siblings, 2 of us are outcasts. I bet the 2 of you that are outcasts are the ones that are awake to the abuse. I bet that. I bet a lot of money on that. The 2 awake ones always become the outcasts. Okay, look, I think we've done like around 45 minutes now, somewhere, yeah, nearly 45 minutes. Delora is spending Christmas by myself to avoid the narcissist behaviour from my family. Good for you. Good for you. I'm sorry you have to do that as well. My parents say I'm ungrateful because I don't want them with me in America. Yeah, the old "you're ungrateful" one is a big line from them. Thank you, we should talk. Send me a message, Angela. Send me a message. I live in the UK with my family in South Africa. They ignore me and think I'm better, which is false. I just moved on. Yeah. Oh, Liam. Sorry, mate. Yeah, how you doing? My mum's partner is a narcissist, and now my mum's turned her back on me and her grandson. Is a narcissist mentally ill? Here's how I'd answer that question. Is a paedophile mentally ill? And does it matter? That's the answer I'd give to the question. Like, I don't know. I don't think it holds any relevance. Let's set it up. I'll come to Australia. We'll try and make it happen. Look, over the next few years, I do believe that I'll start traveling a lot more in terms of globally. This year coming is going to be a lot of traveling around the UK. Oh my God, it's Aquaman. Listen, that's my cue to end it. I'm going to take that, right? Because I've been getting trolled so badly this week. When I put the videos out about toxic parents and that, right? The abuse that I get is quite severe. So I'm going to take the Aquaman compliment as let's get out of here before you get any more abuse. Let me read that last comment here. My mum doesn't congratulate me on my achievements, but brags about me to strangers. It's strange. Oh, that is so classic. That is so classic. And by the way, in this social media world that we live in now, what they'll also do is pay you no attention whatsoever, not get in contact, not care about your achievements, not care when crap happens in your life, and then out of the blue, they'll arrange to meet you, take loads of photos of you looking happy and plaster them all over social media so it looks like they're amazing. I'm going to finish on that, okay? Really appreciate it. Thanks everybody. I'll do more of these, of course. I'll try and do as many as I can. This will also be on YouTube. Hopefully by the end of today, I'll try and get it straight on there if I can. And I'll see you all very soon.